Nope. Yep. 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 Nope. Yep.
दिन रात दौड़ती इस दुनिया में, क्या तुम्हें अपनी परवाह भी है? औरों की खुशी में खुश हो तुम, क्या इससे ज्यादा कुछ चाह भी है? नम आँखों की मुस्कान हो, तप त्याग की पहचान हो, उम्मीदें हो सबकी दिलासे हो तुम। खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम, खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम। जो वक्त तुम्हारा हिस्सा था शायद पल उसका जिया नहीं, जो ख्वाब तुम्हारा किस्सा था छूटा तो शिकवा किया नहीं। तुमने ही दी रिश्तों को धड़कने, तुमने ही की हर सभी उलझने, हर लफ्ज की रफ्तार तुम, हमदर्द लगे हर बार तुम, ज़मीं के फरिश्ते दुआ से हो तुम। खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम, खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम, खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम, खुदा तो नहीं पर खुदा से हो तुम।
Good afternoon to all of you. We are waiting to join our chief guest, Professor Vishnu Sharma. But meanwhile, there is some glitch in the connectivity, so we will, as soon as our chief guest will appear, we will have a opening remark. It may be in the starting or maybe in the end. On behalf of Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine Society, it is my privilege to welcome the chief guest of today's national seminar, Professor Vishnu Sharma ji, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Rajasthan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences. Our learned speaker, Professor Ajay Kumar Gehlot, our knowledge partner, Head Dr. Nitin Bhatia, Associate Vice President in TAS Animal Health, VIPM President Dr. A.U. Bikane, Associate Dean PGI BS Akola, Vice President Dr. D.S. Meena and Dr. A.S. Rawal, our Executive General Secretaries, Media Secretary Dr. Nilesh Sindhu, and all regional secretaries, organizing secretaries Dr. Deepika Dhuria and co-organizing secretary Dr. J.P. Kachawa, and Microchip team manager Dr. Amanjot Singh and Rajni Chaudhary, and more importantly, our all connected participants. Sir, VIPM is organizing a web seminar series starting from the last month on different topics. Last month, we have 2 seminars on the topic of cardiology. This month, we have decided to hold a seminar on a very important topic, production medicine. Today, we are very delighted and VIPM feel highly privileged to the presence of 2 great personalities. In this today's national seminar, we have Professor Dr. Vishnu Sharma ji, Vice Chancellor Rajvas Bikaner, and the Professor Dr. A.K. Gehlot ji, former and founder VC of same university. Namaskar, sir. Thank you, sir. So, our chief guest, Professor Vishnu Sharma, is a renowned academician and a scientist in the area of animal nutrition. He obtained International Diploma in Animal Feed Training Program from IPC Livestock College, Netherlands. He had also experience to work as an assistant professor at Addis Ababa University, FPM Debre Jets, Ethiopia. Professor Sharma had been a part of number of national policy making committees, such as a member of Rajasthan Livestock Policy Formulation Committee, Government of Rajasthan, member of Animal Husbandry Vision 2015 in Rajasthan, Government of Rajasthan, consultant to the Rajasthan Go Seva Ayog, Government of Rajasthan, member of state level group of Animal Husbandry, 5-year planning of the state planning department of Government of Rajasthan, Jaipur, honorary consultant to the Green Earth Foundation, an NGO in the state for the environmental issues. Professor Sharma has been the awardee of number of national and international awards, different fellowship and fellows. More importantly, he is a recipient of fellowship from Netherlands, Government of Netherlands for Sustainable Livestock and National Academy of Veterinary Sciences, an important fellowship. Professor Sharma has also completed number of prestigious international assignments as a member in the delegation to the participate in OIE meeting at USA, Brazil, in Ethiopia, Philippines, Malaysia, in regional workshop for veterinary and education establishment held at Tokyo, Japan. So really, this is a great matter of pride to this society to have such a great personality as a chief guest of today's seminar. With the very highest regard, I invite our chief guest, Professor Sharma, for opening comments and some word of encouragement and blessing to this VIPM society. Professor Sharma, please.
Thank you very much for nice words. I'm audible?
Okay, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, at the outset, I appreciate Intas Pharmaceutical Limited, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, and Veterinary Internal Preventive Medicine for this really very nice gesture and very nice creation of this workshop today. Dr. A.K. Bikhane, President of the Society, Dr. Ashok Kumar, who is the General Secretary of the Society, you both have chosen a very nice theme of the conference of this today's webinar. And moreover, you have chosen a legendary personality in the veterinary medicine, Professor A.K. Gehlot, sir. I really appreciate your theme as well as the thematic person whom you have chosen. And I am hopeful that this is a kind of unique delivery you have chosen. And okay, so I was just going, sorry for some initial interruption in the connection process. I hope that now everything is okay. I am clearly audible and visible. So I was going through in the morning the looking towards the theme of the webinar. So it was just came to my mind that we want to speak really the relation of the veterinary medicine from the time when the human activity started. Since then, till date, we have to explore a complete ecological epoch or geological epoch. So in that way, it gives to me impression that it's really such a unique topic you have chosen, and it's not that topic for the veterinary medicine. We have to take this topic for all of the cross disciplines so that we can explore our relations from the ancient time till date, where we have progressed and where we have to go in the future. Human activity, as I was thinking, whenever we are talking about the human activity, very soon it's covering the ecology, and in the ecology, the biodiversity and all about, but mainly the animal interaction. The human and animal interaction is the most important interaction in the living world from since the ancient ages till today. And when we are talking about this, I'm sure that Gehlot sir will deliver a very, very complete know-how and everything about that. But just to speak up my mind, whenever we are talking about the animal or livestock, 2-3 things comes to our mind. That the safety purpose we keep the animals in the ancient time for the guard purposes, and then later on it comes the food purposes, because the human activity started around 10,000 years ago or so when the agricultural revolution was started. So we are keeping the animals for the safety purpose, for the food purpose, and then for the leisure or entertainment purpose. Then during different epochs, and during different geological time, the purposes change, the delivery changes, and accordingly the delivery changes. So I was just looking about that the production medicine. I will talk about production medicine. So production medicine in the present time, it's not only the product which we are getting out of the animal. We can take the pet animal companionship also in the production medicine in one way. If you see that in various countries you know that gross national instead of gross domestic product, they consider the happiness index as a productivity. So here how the pet are giving supporting the productivity of the human being, we can also consider it. It's just in lighter mode an idea to the community of the veterinary medicine that we can completely overview the production in completely different aspect. So that was I was just thinking that production medicine is completely changing. Earlier, the whole human society was looking towards the food security, but now it's going all together for the food safety. And you all know that the animal product or our food platter has been largely taken up by the animal products, and right through from the childhood to the old age people, everybody is dependent on the animal products. Apart from few countries, there are largely the meat eating communities and the milk and egg, all you know. So with that, if I relate with the present COVID situation, then the whole world, the whole society, human being is highly sensitized for the safety issues or the food value issues or the processing issues. So with that, we have to go more for the safety than the security. So that is the one aspect I am just throwing, that now we need animal product, but we need safe animal product. So the safe word, safe prefix has been added very firmly now, and the whole veterinary fraternity or the community has to work for that. So that is the one aspect I wanted to throw, that we have to give, because any unhealthy animal is not supposed to give the safe product. So to get the safe product, we have to make the animal healthy. Then there is a emerging importance of the zoonotic diseases nowadays. We all know nowadays that there is a recently, I was hearing last evening that the WHO sent 2-member team to the China to investigate or to explore some of the scientific investigations related to this COVID-19. Soumya Swaminathan ji, she was telling about, and out of those 2 persons, one was from the human medicine, another was from the veterinary medicine. So, I mean, that's the clear indication that now the scientific community is looking towards veterinary scientists with great expectations to solve the emerging and re-emerging diseases. So zoonosis is another aspect for which we have to give more focus. We have to create the protocols. We have to create the strict, pathways, how to rear the animal, how to get product out of the animal, and we have to give a regulatory framework to those regulations, a regulatory framework, maybe a statutory or legal framework in time to come, because any aberration in the product process or any aberration in the regulation creating anywhere in the world is supposed to affect the whole of the globe. We have seen that. So with that we have to look towards that regulatory framework also in time to come. Apart, like we know that the HACCP is there. The HACCP is for product output, but we can make it as the animal husbandry practices also some critical control points, that while we are giving our focus on those critical control points, we will be able to prevent the zoonotic diseases. Something like that we have to work now. So those are the things, क्योंकि जब हम कहते हैं कि लोहा गर्म होता है उस टाइम पर चोट दी जाए तो ज्यादा अफेक्ट होता है। उसी तरह से अभी जो प्रेजेंटली जो सिचुएशन है पूरे वर्ल्ड में, पूरी ह्यूमन सोसाइटी के अंदर, पूरी कम्युनिटी के अंदर, दे आर वेरी मच सेंसिटाइज्ड अबाउट दोज इश्यूज, एनिमल ह्यूमन लिंक। And now at this time we have to take advantage of this situation where we can really sensitize the community in a very effective way by putting forward our views, by putting forward our suggestions and recommendations to the government so that those things can be done. Another thing which I want to say, because I will not take much time, but now the time has come, apart from the clinical medicine, the time has come largely for the preventive medicine, because there is requirement of, now we have seen that antimicrobial resistance is there. The veterinarians sometimes using the antibiotics, sometimes they are using non-judicious also. So while addressing those issues, nowadays we have to shift little bit, or we have to explore more research for the non-allopathic type of medicine also. Maybe Ayurvedic, maybe homeopathic, maybe any alternative system of the medicine, because this is the food animal. We have to understand this thing. When this is food animal, so we want that the minimum residues should remain in the animals or livestock. Whenever there is necessity of the allopathic medicine, it should be on record, and then all proper regulation and formulation framework should be there. So with those 3-4 points, I am just very thankful to the organizers, INTAS, as well as the Veterinary Medicine Society, that they have given me opportunity to share some of my views with the large galaxy of the veterinarians and the veterinary medicine faculty, and we should not take it only as a production medicine, but just as I told you, the pet animal medicine should also be taken as a production medicine, because nowadays pet animals are also now being used as a assisted therapies or as a companion animals, where there are directly peer-reviewed papers are available that the coronary diseases, they are, I mean, positively impacting to the patient which are having coronary disease or any psychological problems. They are giving the real benefit to the human society. So we should, those advantages, we should take into account those advantages, and we should unite ourselves, create a self-confidence in ourselves as a veterinary fraternity and as our contribution to the human society, and then we will able to create a better tomorrow. Thank you very much once again. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening your ideas and giving some future direction, especially in the area of animal medicine and production medicine especially. So I am extremely thankful to be here in this seminar, sir. Sir, now our today's speaker, Professor Dr. Ajay Kumar Gehlot, is a legend in the animal science. He is a well-known administrator and policy planner. Presently, Professor Gehlot is a member of Advisory Board of Governor of Rajasthan and the Vice President of Indian Veterinary Association. He is a Rashtriya Sanyojak of the Rajasthan Go Seva Parishad and the patron of this VIPM Society. Professor Gehlot had been on the number of coveted positions. He is a founder and the former Vice Chancellor of Rajavas Bikaner, and he is a fellow of a number of national and international societies, NAVS, ISVM, IAVR. He had been the guiding force to the ICR and the universities at different capacities. For example, chairman of QRTs for the ICR institutes, member of ICR review committees for EICRPs, BCI, Executive Council of Chhattisgarh, Kanpur University, Chhattisgarh, member of University Council of ESCOAST, Jammu, former chairman of UGC team for accreditation of ICR IVRI Jatnagar, Bareilly, and also worked as the chairman of ICR peer review committee for Vet University, Tirupati for accreditation, and the former member of Rajasthan Farmer Association. So he is really a legend in the veterinary medicine. This is really a pride matter to the society to accept our invitation to deliver a very important talk today on animal production medicine in Anthropocene epoch. With a full regards and highest regards, I invite Professor Gehlot to start the lecture on this talk. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar, for your nice words about me. Most of the things probably I don't deserve, but thanks a lot for that. And thank you, Professor Vishnu Sharma, to have spared time to join this webinar and a very good initial address. And I think there was a sync in your thoughts as well as my mind. And probably some of your thoughts will be incorporated, you will find in my presentation also. So thanks to the VIPM Society, I am straight away switching over to presentation. I think the screen is shareable, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
It is shareable. So I will be touching animal production medicine in Anthropocene epoch. As Professor Vishnu Sharma has already underlined the importance of human activities in the livestock production as well as management. Before going into details of my presentation, I would like to extend my heartfelt welcome to Professor Vishnu Sharma ji as a chief guest today. And I welcome all the participants, particularly students and young faculty members. I have been told that more than 900 participants they have joined, so it's a good thing. Now in this presentation, around 50 slides will be there. I will be touching these topics: why pressure on more food production, and why pressure on more animal origin food, production medicine, need of the hour, emerging infectious diseases or EIDs, what are the drivers for these emerging diseases, COVID-19, as our chief guest has also touched an example for vets, what are the concerns for vet for this, then climate change, One Health, planetary health also is coming up, then scale of human impact on the planet, then Anthropocene epoch, and a new term only 2-3 months back I have come across, microbiocene. Then pan-endemic Anthropocene production medicine, Anthropocene epoch driven production medicine, principles of production medicine, conclusions, and some good quotes for youngsters and references. So with these, before I proceed, I would request young participants to also go through my keynote address entitled as Changing Face of Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine in Anthropocene Epoch, which was presented in the first annual convention of VIPM Society held at Duasu, Mathura. And I think detailed keynote address is there in the souvenir also. Now, why pressure on more food production? You know, it has been estimated that the human population will touch 10 billion by 2050, and currently it is 7.7 billion today. With this 10 billion population, the world will require 60% increase in the food production. Now, this 60% increase will be coupled with 30% more requirement of water for agriculture, which is a very big issue, and 30% losses post-production till consumption, and it has been now calculated that as high as 25% losses are there, which are after preparation of meal till consumption. So this is enormous when we are talking about removing hunger from the world. Then there will be enormous pressure on farming to produce more food, as we will be requiring 60% more, and ever reducing water availability as well as ever reducing land for farming. Then the requirements for environmentally sustainable mode, Now we have to convert our farming systems, maybe agriculture, maybe animal husbandry, to that mode which is sustainable environmentally, because of the fact that we are every time talking about climate change and even Anthropocene epoch also, and more circumscribed by climate change as well as changing dietary preference. You'll see that how the dietary preference is changing very fast, even in case of India. I am presenting this, and we need to see only the central column, where 26 to 27, 28% of total food, even in rural and urban families, is of animal origin. So this is increasing day by day, and it is expected that by 2050, this should be around 40%. So therefore, this demands that there is a lot of pressure on animal origin food production, and therefore production medicine becomes need of the hour. And if we will be touching production medicine later on also in detail, but summarily it is the application of wide array of knowledge and skills to herd management with the aim of optimizing animal health and welfare.
गहलोत सर सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट, आपके नीचे में एक बॉक्स आ रहा है, उसको खाली नीचे मिनिमाइज कर दीजिए.
इसको क्या करना है?
मिनिमाइज कर दीजिए बस.
ओके, थैंक यू. Then animal health, production and profitability. These are the issues which demands that the production medicine is the need of the hour. We should think in those terms. Now, before we go to climate change, One Health, planetary health, Anthropocene epoch, microbiocene, etc., let us understand some of the terms or phenomena which are related to emerging disease. Now, as we all know that EIDs or emerging infectious diseases, they are of much concern for human beings as well as animals also, because of the fact that most of the time they are zoonotic. So if we remember initially, till its full genetic evaluation of COVID-19 virus was made, the virus was named as novel coronavirus, NCOV. Now, novel refers to pathogens that already exist but have gained access to new host population. And this new host population may be human beings also. These may be animals also in some of the cases. Now, EIDs, they arise from animals with whom humans share gene. Now, I will be explaining how we are sharing genes, not only from animals, even from microbes also, even from viruses also. We share physiology, we share microorganisms, and we share environment. So that is why we always talk of One Health. Emerging infectious diseases, they have been identified that 75% of the EIDs, they are zoonosis that result from various anthropogenic factors. These anthropogenic term, it's a fancy term denoting human-driven factors. Then genetic, ecological, socio-economic and climatic factors. Now, anthropogenic influence on ecological systems, it determines that what will be the level of the risk which will be operating at the interface between humans and animals in zoonotic EIDs. Now, disease emergence in human populations could actually be seen as a sign of zoonotic pathogens adaptation, as an eco-evolutionary response to environmental and genetic changes, coinciding with its capacity to subsist in new environments, that is new hosts. And perhaps we could think about these disease events less in terms of emergence and more in terms of immersion in a multiply-driven living milieu. Means there are many plies in the living world of the Earth or the planet. Then we are living with other forms of life. That means that we exist in a universe that in turn imposes each form of life upon us, and in which all living beings are immersed. Now, people have used the term like pond, that we are living in a condition like pond, where right from virus to multicellular organisms, including human beings, they are living. So in a pond, it is very difficult to get a different environment. So that is why we have a similar environment, and now scientists, they have started thinking that we should think about the total planet or the total ecosystem. And from this vintage point, we can conceive that humans are not as a species or a organism, and not as a discrete biological entity, but they are part of a wider biosocial ecosystem. So this is the term which is being used, that sorry, the complete biological ecosystem is a biosocial ecosystem, and we should mind the word social, which has been specifically added recently to describe the complete ecosystem. Now, coming to another term, drivers. This term defines the conditions of a pathogen to emerge into a susceptible population. Now, those conditions which are necessary for the pathogen, they are known as drivers. In zoonotic EIDs, the type of driver most persistently mentioned in both the eco-epidemiological literature is the anthropogenic, that means developed by human beings. Anthropogenic environmental changes lead to the emergence of infectious diseases in wildlife also. It has also been identified that due to anthropogenic changes, even many of the diseases, they are being observed in wildlife. And we are seeing every other day that even in the sanctuaries or the zoological parks, even to the precious species like lions and tigers, they are suffering from such diseases which were not earlier reported from India particularly, or from that particular environment in the past. So that means there are some anthropogenic drivers which are there, lead to the emergence of infectious diseases in wildlife also. Now, COVID-19, is it an example for vets also? If we see that actually the humanity's destruction of biodiversity, which our chief guest was also talking, that creates the conditions for new viruses and diseases like COVID-19. The viral disease that emerged in China in December 2019 to arise with health and economic impacts in rich and poor countries alike. That is very important, that it has not spared neither the rich nor the poor. So we cannot say that this is a disease of resource poor persons or resource poor countries. In late December 2019, China confirmed dozens of pneumonia cases in Wuhan city, suggesting the infection transmitted from animals to human beings. This was the talk in December 19. Now, coming further, by January 22, 2020, experts declared that etiological agent of nCoV or novel coronavirus, which was also regarded as SARS-CoV-2, originated from bats. Now, in early February 2020, you see how fast the scientists there went on to detect the actual nature of the virus. Molecular epidemiologists identified genetic similarity between 2019 and COVID virus in horseshoe bats as well as pangolins sold at wet markets. Pangolins, they are one of the mammals which has been largely sold in wet market or maximally poached animal mammal. And reports contribute to the ongoing hypothesis of viral recombination between bats and pangolins, which in turn infected humans. So there are a number of reports in the current year also. So how does we have seen Ebola also? How does Ebola spread? The short answer is that it mutated into a strain that was able to jump into human because of human encroachment into the forests, which were the natural reservoirs of the virus, and the decline of other animal population that might have shielded us from it. So this was the hypothesis given for Ebola. Experts believe that next deadly human pandemic, I am not scaring unnecessarily, but this is what has been recently published in 2020 itself, that the next deadly human pandemic will almost certainly be a virus that spills over from wildlife to humans. The reasons why have a lot to do with the frenetic pace with which we are destroying wild places and disrupting ecosystems. So this is again a reason that the interaction of human being or anthropogenic causes, they are now leading to eruption of or emergence of infectious diseases. Now coming to climate change, which is a very friendly term nowadays. We all know what climate change means, but I will show some of the slides or patterns how the animals or livestock is impacting the climate change, or the climate change is impacting livestock production. So animal health could be affected both by extreme events. Two sorts of calamities they are expected for animals. One is extreme events, that means extreme high or low temperatures, and now people are predicting dry spells as well as flood situations also. They are also being added into these extreme events, and by the emergence and re-emergence of infectious diseases, some of them transmitted by vectors that are highly dependent on climatic conditions. That means the vectors are also expected to increase in number and to be found in those areas where till now we have not detected those vectors of the disease particularly. Now this is a, I will not go into the detail, but it was a very concise graphical representation. So that's why I have tried to include, and we all know that the climate change impact on climate is assessed by increase of N2O or nitrous oxide, and then CO2, and increase of methane, apart from increase in the temperature. So what will be the impact of food production, manure on increase in N2O? What shall be the impact of feed production or fertilizer application, processing and transport, then manufacturing and processing of transport of fertilizers, land use changes on increase in carbon dioxide, and what shall be the effect of manure, your feed production, animal production on methane. So this is a very beautiful graphical representation, and I will request the organizers to share my presentation to all those who have participants who have given their emails, so that they can thoroughly read. Another, this is the livestock sector emission. We should know actually what is the extent of contribution of livestock sector. So post farm, direct energy, indirect energy, land use change, feed, manure management, enteric fermentation, Then again feed, then manure management, fertilizer, crop residues, and applied and deposited manures. Now, if you see the topmost blue lined indicates carbon dioxide. The middle one, red zigzag lines, it indicates methane, and the lowest green lines, this indicates N2O. Now, if we see, we will find that the direct impact from livestock sector, even to methane production, is the highest, 39.1% of the total 100%. But rest is the management, and particularly the manure management, the land use change, the agriculture which we do for feed and fodder production, the fertilizers which we use, and the crop residues which are dumped or which are burnt. So these are this graph indicates that direct contribution of livestock is less, but what people are trying to collect everything related with livestock and regard that the total contribution of livestock has been estimated to be around 14.5% in global warming. You will see in this slide the CO2, N2O, and methane. The bottommost 14.5% of total greenhouse gases, they have been regarded due to livestock production. Now, this is a reverse graph where impact of climate change on livestock. Now, till now we have seen what is the impact of livestock on climate change, but here it indicates the impact of climate change, and this is of more concern to us. There are three important factors of climate change which will be impacting the livestock. One is the increase in carbon dioxide, another increase in temperature, which is the centralmost cone or triangle. And the third is the precipitation variation, because of the fact that I have said earlier also that people have now started adding dry season as well as flood seasons spells into climatic events other than temperature also. So these three factors will be affecting livestock. If we see carbon dioxide, the forage production will be affected by both carbon dioxide as well as by temperature. And there is a in this there is a mention that there will be changes in herbal growth, of which more effect will be on C3 species. So there are two types of plant species, C3 species and C4 species. And in C4 species, those plants are there which are usually grown in arid region, where during photosynthesis the 4 carbon atom combination is synthesized in the leaf itself, and it's a specific anatomical and physiological feature which safeguards C4 plants from climate change or make them more climate resilient. The attendees, they can get the details of C3 and C4 type of plants on the net also. It is easily available. Then the increase in temperature, the water requirement, it has been estimated that with the increase in temperature of 2 to 4 degree, the total consumption of water will be 2 to 3 times more in case of large animals. Then forage effect of high temperature will be on the nutrients of the forage, on the production of the forage also. Then on the reproduction as well as on the health, the temperature will have a direct impact. then the precipitation variation will have effect on forays as well as diseases. Precipitation variation as well as increase in temperature will lead to what we are concerned with today's topic, lead to emergence of many diseases. That means there will be increase in pathogens, increase in parasites, certain types of parasites. Then disease spreading will be more easy and more widespread. Then similarly, disease transmission, there may be new diseases. We have already talked about EIDs. Then outbreak of severe disease and spreading of vector-borne disease. All these things we have seen. So they have been depicted in this beautiful graph by Rosas, Downing et al. 2017. Now, from climate change, now we are talking about One Health. Now, even OIE, WHO, they are also advocating a One Health approach. So, this is an approach to global health research that emphasizes the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environment well-being. And it includes correlative call to examine zoonosis vis-a-vis transdisciplinary collaboration efforts that target the pathogenic activity at the human, animal, environment interface. So this is what One Health was described way back in 2011, and even little before that, 2010, OIE has organized an international conference on One Health program, as well as WHO has also been talking since 2008 or 2007 about the need of One Health approach. Now, OIE defines One Health concept as human health and animal health are interdependent and bound to be to the health of the ecosystem in which they exist. Now, 60% of existing human infectious diseases are zoonotic, 75% of emerging infectious human diseases are zoonotic, and zoonotic diseases, there are 2 billion cases per year and more than 2 million deaths. So this is the impact of zoonotic disease in human beings. And the factors responsible are disrupted environment. All of them are anthropogenic factors developed by human activities. Disrupted environment characteristics due to climate change, deforestation, intensive farming, closer and more frequent interaction due to increased trade and travel. And we have seen in case of COVID that the spread from China to almost throughout the world was on account of travel. Then in One Health, people have developed a curriculum model also, which has been designed to encourage undergraduate students of varying disciplines to value the connectedness of animals, human, and environment, and to think innovatively about solutions on priority of global health issues. Topics were organized around 4 key categories: infectious zoonotic disease and global health, naturally occurring shared disease in companion animals, very well said by our chief guest, that we should not exclude companion animals from today's talk. So sir, here it is there, and that can serve as models for human disease and human animal interactions and impact of environmental health to human and animal health. So this is the curriculum model, which has been very recently, only in this year 2020, it has been floated. Then a new term has emerged: planetary health, health of the planet. A new discipline termed as planetary health is emerging that focuses on increasingly visible connections among the well-being of humans, other living things, and entire ecosystem. And it is another concept that emphasizing the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health, but it takes less multi-species approach than One Health, foregrounding the epidemiological entanglements of biology and biospheric processes instead. So it more is concerned with the biology and biospheric processes which are responsible for the health of the planet. Now, there is a substantial and credible pool of evidence that links human activities and aggressions at multiple scales towards the environment with the accelerating rhythm of new and re-emerging infectious diseases. We have already seen it in case of EIDs. And this is precisely the type of problem to which cross-sectoral global health initiatives like One Health and adjacent movements like Planetary Health and Eco Health are responding when they emphasize the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health problems. So this is again a new term. Now, if we see the scale of human impact on the planet, it's a real eye-opener for all of us that about a third of ice-free and desert-free land surface, ice-free and desert-free land surface of planet has been converted to cropland or pasture. That means it has been used. So 1/3 of that surface has been converted into a farming or agriculture or crop production land. Annually, roughly half of the accessible fresh water is appropriated for human use. This is also very high amount, and we are afraid that by 2050, water will be the most scarce commodity. More than 2.3 million square kilometers of primary forest has been cleared since 2000. So it's only 20 years. In last 20 years, we have cleared 2.3 million square kilometers of the primary forest. And more than 60% of world's rivers are dammed, affecting in excess of 0.5 million kilometer of river. So it is 50.5 lakh kilometer of river has been affected by our human activity impact, and that is how we are concerned about the planetary health. Then extinction rate of species is more than 100 times that observed in fossil record, and many remaining species are decreasing in number. Concentrations of major greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, are at their highest level for at least the past 8 lakh years. So it's almost a million years ago. Since last 1 million year, the greenhouse gases, their quantity is the highest. The global temperature continues to rise above long-term historic level, driving changes in climate and weather patterns. So my major emphasis was that we should understand why I have kept most of the part of my presentation on these things, that we should understand what is the climate change, what is One Health, what is then it will be very easy for us in a few minutes to understand what is the need of the production medicine, or where the production medicine should go. Now coming to Anthropocene epoch, I have already quoted that my keynote address. So from that, I am quoting: Anthropocene epoch is the current geological epoch, following on from the Holocene and demarcated as the time when human activities began to have a substantial global effect on the Earth system. So Anthropocene epoch is based on when human activities have been markedly affecting the Earth systems, and a cutoff year has been decided by the geologists, which is 1950 CE, and associated with marked political and economic changes, including regional instability, reductions in political or economical barriers to trade, influencing veterinary practice and management of the health, well-being and productivity of animals used for production of fiber and human food. So this is what the Anthropocene epoch is, and this is just a graphical representation that where after 1950 we are calling the Anthropocene epoch. Before that, it was Holocene and Pleistocene. Now, coming to a very new term, which I have also come across truthfully while preparing for this presentation itself, because this is a publication of 11th June 2020. Basic features of the word as it emerges from COVID-19. After this COVID-19, pandemic, this article has been published. All of life exists in a viral cloud within and outside of cells. Now, this microbiocene is a term which says that it's predominantly we are living, multicellular organisms are living in the major dominance of microorganisms and including virus. So the first point itself, it says that all of life exists in a viral cloud within and outside of cells, means these viruses are present within the cells also and outside the cells also. We humans share a long history with the viruses and other microbes. We are shaped by them, made by them, and cannot be differentiated from them. My presentation will say that 8% of our genes, they are shared by viruses. We are multi-species assemblages among multi-species assemblages in a microbial viral world, inseparably connected, interwoven and porous. This is the microbial or viral world, which cannot be separated. It is connected, interwoven and porous. The same article says that for billions of years, bacteria, viruses, fungi and archaea were Earth's sole living inhabitants. They occupied every ocean, river and lake, every inch of land and air. They drove the chemical reactions that created the biosphere and thereby created the conditions for the evolution of multicellular life. So this is very interesting to understand, although we all know that before multicellular life, the single cellular organisms, they were there. Very interestingly, bacteria made the oxygen we breathe, the soil we till, and the food webs that sustain our oceans. Viruses regularly kill vast swaths of bacteria and thereby regulate the biogeochemical cycles on which all of life depends. Means every life on the planet depends on these biogeochemical cycles. Microbes invented the feedback systems that support all life on Earth, giving rise to all past and present life forms. All organisms that have ever lived emerged from bacteria and viruses. All organisms, including us humans, are inseparably interwoven with and contingent on them. The same article says that seen from this perspective, we decisively do not live in Anthropocene. We live in the microbiocene. The reality is not, as the term Anthropocene implies, that the boundaries between human and nature get blurred. Rather, the reality is that we humans still have not learned to think about ourselves in terms of microbial, the viral world of which we are a part. So this is what the microbiocene has been described by Tobias in June 2020. Now, my comments on this is that from the article was from the name from the Anthropocene to the microbiocene. This was the title of this article, and let this theory of Tobias, published on June 10th, 2020, be validated and supported by others. So this is I purposefully presented because the word is going one step ahead of Anthropocene. Still, we were talking that Anthropocene epoch is the main epoch which is affecting the animals as well as human beings. Now, Pan-endemic Anthropocene. This is a new term which has also been given. The term pan-endemic Anthropocene has been proposed to refer the multifocal infectious disease epidemics related to human caused forces. That means anthropogenic forces such as urbanization, globalization, industrialization, and the growing populations of humans and animals. A collaborative mechanism has been suggested for increasing One Health in medical education. Now, this is very interesting that in medical education, the One Health subject, it has been introduced by many of the universities of the world to create a synergy of strengths between the growing number of contributing One Health organizations internationally. So that is the purpose of introduction of One Health course in medical education. Now, coming to production medicine, I could find only College of Veterinary Medicine, University of Minnesota, offering a short-term 2 to 4 weeks production medicine program, and this is 2020 program from their University of Minnesota's website. Preventive medicine and disease control. The program includes these topics. So I have particularly chosen to present today to understand what production medicine means. So it is preventive medicine and disease control, reproductive programs, nutrition, mastitis, production system evaluation, epidemiology, food safety, human resource management, economic decision making, housing and facilities. So some of the points which our chief guest pointed out, they have already been included in this production medicine program, like the food safety, the nutrition, preventive medicine and disease control. So we should now understand what production medicine includes. What is the ambit of production medicine? This course program is specific, although it's a 2 to 4 weeks program only. It is meant for veterinary graduates. It is being offered. 2 types of programs are there: 2 weeks program and 4 week is the advanced program. Now, coming to Anthropocene epoch driven production medicine. What are the reasons? Our new edition, 11th edition of our old, when I was a student, it was known as Blood and Anderson. Now it is Constable et al. 2017. So it has included in its introductory chapter itself, what is Anthropocene epoch and what are the reasons for it, or what are the challenges. So changing climate, geographical redistribution of disease. What we will be seeing due to changing climate or climate change, there will be geographic redistribution of disease, emergence or re-emergence of extension of disease into new species. Then altered farming patterns. The farmers will be forced to abandon existing land and animal management practices and adopt newer ones, particularly intensive ones. Internationalization of trade, freedom of movement, threat to biosecurity, which we have seen, very clearly in COVID-19 spread throughout the world. Political instability. This I have seen, read it thoroughly, not only from this reference but also from other references also, that it means that when there is a political instability in any territory or any country or any area, there is loss of animal health monitoring and disease control system, and that affects in the animal disease scenario or animal disease epidemiology or animal health very adversely. Then economic pressures to produce more with same or reduced water and land. We have already seen that by 2050, why there is a pressure to produce more just to feed the additional population, but with the lesser resources, particularly water and land. And then societal reasons will also be there. Increased animal welfare. We are seeing that, even in the poultry sector also, the animal welfare or poultry welfare issues, they have creeped in. And some of the battery poultry production systems, they have been objected. Similar is the case with pig production systems also in the world elsewhere. So housing, a very comfortable housing, this is a major issue for animal welfare activists. Mulesing, we all know it was being practiced in Australia, particularly Australia and New Zealand, to avoid myiasis in sheep, but it has been stopped in those countries also. So these are some of the examples how the societal feeling will give rise to more of animal welfare issues to be taken care of by the society. Now, the question is how to transform veterinary medicine. This is the major question, that in future we have to transform veterinary medicine. Effective and economical approach, what should be? Control zoonotic pathogens at their animal source. That's what we are saying always to every planner as well as every administrative table. That if you want to control zoonotic disease, you try any amount for human beings. Unless you try to control those zoonotic pathogens at their animal source, the complete control in human beings will never be achieved. And this requires strict health surveillance to incorporate domestic animals, livestock and poultry also. If we see the condition of human health system, roughly 2 lakh human health institutions are there in the country for a population of more than 125 or 130 crore humans. But then there are only 65,000 veterinary institutions. So this is again, and almost same amount of animals, 125.5 crore livestock plus poultry. So first and foremost crucial step for ensuring human health is a widespread and dependable animal health system, which is the primary requirement. Then we need therefore to refurbish the entire animal husbandry sector to be able to reach every livestock farmer. That is very important that our system should reach to every livestock farmer for 3 purposes. One is disease treatment, which is the primary. Even now the system is reaching to some extent. Then preventive measures like hygiene, sanitation, vaccination, deworming, etc. And very importantly, surveillance of animal disease and pathogens. So the surveillance of animal disease and pathogens, it is need of the hour now, that we should develop an epidemiological wing in all our animal husbandry department, and we should dedicate many of the laboratories in the states as well as with the central government institutes to conduct the surveillance of animal disease surveillance program. Then principles of production medicine. What are the principles? One is the regular farm visit. I need not to explain. It is very essential for that every farm should be visited by veterinarians, not only for emergency but for in the planned visit also. Then clinical examination of animals and diagnosis. That is another second point. I will be skipping this details of this point. We understand that what is the need of clinical examination of animal and diagnosis, and then clinical examination of herd. So this is very important because we have now started talking about herd health, and we have started caring for common herd diseases like the very simple disease like bloat or tympani to diarrhea, debility, reproductive disorders, hemoprotozoan disease, mastitis, respiratory disease, salmonellosis, Zones disease, etc., etc. There are many such common herd diseases. So we need to have a focus on herd health also. Then analysis of production and health data. Now this particularly in Indian condition, this is lacking, but in those organized farms I have seen that those farms have improved themselves very much if they have analyzed production and health data. And I am witness of some of the farms where almost 50% of milking animals were suffering from mastitis, and within a period of 2 years there was a zero mastitis case. Similar is the case with the hemoprotozoan disease on certain farms. So that means if we analyze the production and health data, we can improve the management conditions as well as health of the animals. Then public health and food safety. Food safety has been underlined by our chief guest also today, that it will be a very important aspect in time to come, because of the fact that from food security now we have switched over to food safety, and we want safe food, and that is why we are switching over to more and more processed food. I will not go into details of the side effects of those processed foods, but then they are need of the hour, and there is no option left behind us with us that to have safe food other than to have safe food. And as has been underlined very nicely by our chief guest also, that prudent use of antimicrobials, including adherence to withdrawal times for meat and milk, these are becoming major concerns. Then economics of veterinary practice. Now it's a two-way sword. The farmer wants that the veterinary service should be affordable to him, as well as the veterinarian wants that the service provided by him should be remunerative to him also. So this is the economics of veterinary practice. We need to look this also for production medicine. Now coming to the end, conclusions. By 2050, we shall require 60% more food with less water and land, with increasing demand of animal production or animal protein. Therefore, production medicine becomes need of the hour. Climate change, One Health, planetary health, Anthropocene, microbiocene, etc. are going to provide new challenges in the form of EIDs, more active drivers, nutritional and ambient stresses. And therefore, we need to invent a new approach in the form of Anthropocene epoch-driven production medicine, following appropriate principles of production medicine. So this is what is the conclusion of my presentation today. For youngsters, I have gathered some quotes by a very famous, world-famous physician. The good physician treats the disease. The great physician treats the patient who has the disease. So that is the difference between a good physician and a great physician. And medicine is a science of uncertainty and art of probability. Third quote, very attractive quote is, one of the first duties of physician is to educate the masses, not to take medicine. Now this is very, very important thing. Even Mahatma Gandhi was also saying it, that if you really want to serve, a good doctor is that doctor whom the minimum number of patients are coming. So one of the first duties of physician is to educate the masses, not to take medicine. And he who studies medicine without books, I will stress to youngsters, specifically I have included this quote, that he who studies medicines without books is just like sailing an uncharted sea. But he who studies medicine without patients does not go to sea at all. So these are very interesting quotes, particularly for the youngsters, young students as well as young faculty members. And these quotes are from Sir William Osler. He was the first baronet. It's a British hereditary dignity, which was title provided first in the world. Sir William Osler was provided. and he was a Canadian physician and one of the 4 founding professors of Johns Hopkins Hospital, Maryland, US. In 1889, the hospital was founded with $7 million. That is equivalent to around $150 million today. And Osler created the first residency program. Another important thing which he introduced a sort of a internship program during those days, 1849 to 1990. First residency program for specialty training of physicians, and he was the first to bring medical students out of the lecture hall for bedside clinical training. So with these quotes, these are the references. If this presentation goes for distribution, I think all these references, many of them, half of them are of 2020 or 2019, and most of them are available on the net also, accessible on the net as free reference, and very important, very interesting information is there. So the younger faculty members or the youngsters, students who want to enrich their knowledge about all these topics which have been touched today by me, they can go through these references. And the acknowledgement, thanks to VIPM and organizers of this webinar, especially Dr. Ashok Kumar, General Secretary, and Dr. A.U. Bikhane, President of VIPM Society, for providing me this opportunity of presentation today. It's a really indeed a very great pleasure for me, a proud privilege also. Help extended by Dr. Nitin Bhatia of INTAS and Drs. Praveen Bishnoi and Dr. JP Kachawa for helping me to be able to link today. So they spent almost 3-4 hours with me yesterday. And last but not the least, thanks to my better half and grandchildren for allowing me to steal family time in preparing this presentation. So with this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your nice presentation. And it is really very good presentation. It gives us a clear vision what we were and what we are now, and where should we think about our production medicine. There are some questions arises by the attendees, sir, and a few questions we have selected. One question is there, sir. There are some suggestions in this question, and then after a query is there. So when we figure animal production as a solution to decreasing plant production and increasing population, but ultimately animals are to be fed plant only. So what will be the effect of increasing animal production on agriculture?
It's very simple. There is no need of panic or no need of apprehension. You know, our scientists, they have been trying. At one time, if I remember some 40 years back or 30 years back, most of the milch animals, even in Rajasthan, they were maintained on nature subsidy or on grazing pasture. Now we all know that pasture lands, they have been degraded and they are not very much available. So almost zero nature subsidy. So all the animals are being stall fed. Even in case of sheep and goat also, in case of Rajasthan, very small, but at least 25% of sheep and goat, particularly goats, they are being fed, stall fed. We have started, our animal nutritionists, they have now detected as well as suggested what are the crop residues. So crop residues will be ever available. I can give several examples. Say for example, if we talk of camel or even cattle also, earlier some 3-4 decades back, the Ziziphus numularia leaves or pala leaves, they were readily available in the market. Now its availability is almost zero. So it has been replaced by this groundnut leaves or groundnut straw. So similar is the case that we are regularly finding out what are the crop residues. If any crop residue requires any processing, our nutritionists they are suggesting. So there is no need of panic, because in case of it is the case with the with those countries which particularly rear cattle for meat lot purpose, for meat purpose. Almost 100% agriculture crops, but in our case the animal husbandry is such that our animals they consume crop residue only in a large crop and industrial byproduct. In case of all cakes as well, till the human being will require oil, our animals will get oil cakes. So that is the strength of animal husbandry in India, and that is why we say that it's very it has seen all difficult phases, but still survived.
And in view of the country. Surgical management.
Dr. Meena sir, kindly close your presentation, sir. Dr. Meena sir.
Hello.
Dr. Meena sir, kindly close your presentation.
My screen is shared.
Audio बंद कीजिएगा.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Kachawa, please put on your mic. Your mic is muted.
Yes. Sir, next question we are taking. What is the contribution of livestock to the greenhouse gases anthropogenic emission?
I have already mentioned in this slide, world over it has been estimated as 14.5%. But then the persons who have participants who are asking this question, they might have seen that many of the a very large percentage is their methane emission from ruminants. Its percentage is very less, and the manures, mishandling of manure or the use of fertilizers in crop production, everything has been regarded or clubbed with animal husbandry. So if you purely separate the methanogenic genesis through rumination, then it will come to very small. And even the all other after 14.5% or 15%, 85% are other factors. So we can very well control. You cannot avoid the animals. We are already trying to increase the production of the animal so that their less number can produce more. That is number one. We are already trying to utilize crop residues. These are not exclusively produced for animals. So all those crop residues, their greenhouse GHG contribution should not be accredited to animals. Because if we are producing oil seeds or pulses for human consumption, their crop residue are there. If we are producing wheat, the wheat straw is there for animals. So don't add total wheat production greenhouse gas emission to animals. So if we separate the animals, ruminants, greenhouse gas emission only, then it comes to very less. But still, if we consider 14.5 or even 15%, you have a good chance to reduce 85%. Because of the fact that animal protein will ever be, it cannot be deleted from the diet. In India also, in rural households, recent NSSO survey has said that total expenditure is more than 26% in rural household, and there is only 1% more in urban households, but it was never 26% earlier. So, and it is expected that if the survey is conducted any time by 2020, it is a 4 or 5 years back survey. It will be more than 30% or 1/3. So where the milk will go? We are leader in the milk. Our per capita consumption has grown to very near to 400 grams per capita per day this year. So when we are producing this milk, we are consuming it. So still the animal protein requirement, it cannot be, although we are trying to have those sources, tap those sources, particularly the fishery sector, marine fishery, which contributes least to greenhouse gases, to harvest more. But then again, when I was reading all these literature while preparing this presentation, even the marine fish life is being adversely affected by climate change, very adversely affected. There is an impending danger over marine fish harvesting. So this is the situation.
Thank you, sir. Sir, another question is, what are the improving feeding practices as an adaptation measure? Can it be helpful in improve the efficiency of livestock production?
Yeah, very good question and very good query. Our aim is, now we are on that verge of situation where every penny spent on animal maintenance, may it be nutrition, may it be management, will be accounted, because we are getting zero nature subsidy. There is nothing free from nature. So under such circumstances, our scientists, they are every day evolving new methods, new things, even new feed ingredients also, new crop residues also to be incorporated. So therefore, the cost of feeding, which amounts for around 70% of the total cost in case of cattle, spent on rearing a cattle, is accredited to nutrition only. So this is very important aspect, and that is why we are trying that we should have high producing animal whose feed conversion ratio will be higher.
Thank you very much, sir. You have given very elaborative answers to all questions, and I think all the participants will be benefited with this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So in the last, I request Dr. Dhuria to please give the vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. I take this opportunity to thank every one of you for agreeing and attending the great national webinar and making it successful and memorable. I, on behalf of Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine Society and the entire executive committee, I am highly thankful to today's chief guest of this webinar, Professor Vishnu Sharma sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor Rajuvas Bikaner, for sparing of his hectic schedule to be with us. Address of Honorable Vice Chancellor set the tone of this webinar by clearly indicating the importance of animal production medicine. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence and insights. I am really very grateful to our very respected speaker, founder and former Vice Chancellor of Rajuvas and Member Governor Advisory Board Rajasthan, respected Professor A.K. Gehlot sir, for delivering an important lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and enriching our knowledge in the field of animal production medicine in Anthropocene epoch through very informative and experienced talk in today's COVID scenario. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a very motivated and dedicated president of our society, Dr. A.U. Bikane sir, who continuously guided the team for this program. I may like to express my sincere thanks to General Secretary of the Society, Dr. Ashok Kumar sir, for gracing the occasion and his generous support. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation for the perfect and support to our knowledge partner in Task Animal Health, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, who have planned this webinar with meticulous care and made selfless efforts to make it memorable. I would like to convey my heartiest thanks to important pillar of the society of VIPM, Dr. Mukesh Srivastava, for his cooperation to making today's event a great success. I am also grateful to web coordinators Dr. Nilesh Sandhu and Dr. Sudhir Mehta for wide publicity of event at various platforms. A special thanks to Dr. S.K. Rawal, Dr. Siddiqui, Dr. M.K. Gupta, Dr. D.S. Meena for continuous harmonizing the society through the organizing different events and webinars. I am also thankful to the Dr. J.P. Kachawa for the active involvement in coordinating the webinar. Words are not sufficient to thank the learned listeners for whom this program was executed, and participation in large number has made this a successful event. I am thankful to Office Bearer of the Society for providing me opportunity to act as organizing secretary of this webinar and cast vote for thanks. A big thanks to each one of you for spending valuable time for a beneficial cause. Thank you very much. Be healthy, be safe. Jai Hind. Now there is an announcement. There is a Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine Society is going to organize an e-course on canine electrocardiography from 17th August to 24th August. Kindly join this event. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Intas Pharmaceutical Limited, particularly Dr. Nitin Bhatia.
Our pleasure being there, sir.
Thank you for your continuous support to scientific activities.
Our pleasure, sir. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Nope. Yep. Nope. Yep. Nope. Yep. Nope.